don't think just because someone's challenging you that they're not coming from, they're probably coming from a place of care too. That ingrained way of being, unless they explore it, they don't understand that that could actually be limiting them. From a type A personality that's really driven, that can have a detrimental impact if you don't put that time in. I'm sort of definitely known as a disruptor, and I probably manage that poorly at times. Some people think I'm the biggest prick in the world, but you just got to make a choice. Every decision you make is a balance.
Welcome to Coaching Culture, the podcast about cultivating culture and leadership. I'm Ben Herring, and I've been loving this side of the game for bloody ages. Today's guest is Andrew Hore. Andrew has had a lifetime in the administration side of the game, from performance director, high performance, CEO, you name it, he's done it. His rugby management career has spanned almost 3 decades, including senior roles at Canterbury and the Crusaders, Ospreys in Wales, New Zealand Rugby Union, Welsh Rugby Union, Waratahs in Australia, and most recently, an incredibly successful tenure as CEO of the Blues, and arguably the best they've had in the last 25 years. It takes a special kind of leader to lead successfully at the very top of high performance rugby. So it's an absolute pleasure, Andrew, to have you on the Coaching Culture podcast today.
Yeah, thanks, Benny. I appreciate that, mate. As one that got away from my early days, it's an absolute pleasure to see what you've achieved and where you've gone. It just shows you it didn't have to all be the Crusaders for you to be successful, does it? Hey? You can head south and make something of yourself.
Well, mate, as good as the Crusaders is, there's always another pathway, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. More kids need to know that.
Yeah, well, exactly right. It's as good as it is. There's always options, and you can make your own path, right?
Correct. 100%.
Love it, mate.
Yep. Beat your own drum.
Righto, Hore. First question for you is how do you define culture?
It's a way of being, a way of doing. It's really funny. I just had an instance in my new career where I was sitting with these 2 young Tongan chaps, 22, 23, and we were talking about their career path, where they wanted to go, what they wanted to achieve, having a cup of coffee and actually a Subway sandwich and just having a chat. And they talked about there's the differences between the different parts of the company and the ones that they appreciate. This was unprovoked. It was not. And they talked about there's a Fijian gentleman who's 60, just over 60, right? He still fills the flower aisle. And there's another gentleman called Ione, who's a Samoan gentleman, also over 60. And they said, we want to be We want to be like them. We've seen other parts of the business where they do this, but this is what we like about these guys. Those 2 guys are exemplary. They've been in this company now for 20 years. And it's what they do and the impression that they're having on those young kids right now. And it's because of their behaviours and their habits. And so straight away I was like, shit, it's gold dust. That is culture, right? That's a way of being, a way of doing. That's unwritten. There's layers deep, as we know. There's the thinking you've got to be a way, but there's an ingrained way of being, which is also a little bit sometimes people's weakness, because that ingrained way of being, unless they explore it, they don't understand that that could actually be limiting them and going forward. So as much as what I loved about it was these 2 guys saw just under the iceberg, they saw what they needed, what they wanted to be, but deep down, because then I asked them, are you prepared then to drive that culture if you got, and that was, there's a difference between I'll take direction from them and do, but I'll actually drive. So from where I'm sitting now as a manager, I'm thinking, right, how do I unpeel that part of the iceberg between what they're seeing to what they're applauding to them driving? Does that make sense?
It does.
And so culture to me is that whole part of I think sometimes as leaders we think we've got to be directing, driving that, and coming from a high performance sports science perspective, my greatest learning was when what conditioning coaches and high performance people sometimes, or particularly conditioning coaches, are good at is setting a direction and driving to get there. When moving into other parts of leadership and it was my last couple of meetings at the Blues, I felt really comfortable with this, is actually you've got to set that framework and let your people colour it in. Now you can still influence that by having the meetings beforehand, etc., and having those debates with, say, some key influencers. But ultimately, too, if you've picked right and you've got some resemblance of where you want to go within that, people underneath are generally bloody good at tying into a cause and a purpose. And if you allow them to define what that looks like, and it wasn't, I don't think it was, I think the last few meetings I wanted to leave for the next CEO a really good pack about what my people were feeling, seeing, what was going to drive them. With the Blues, people connection excellence really resonated, but we had to needle down what that really meant. And I think we got there, and it was really, I walked away, I was like, Jesus, I don't know if I want to give this away now, because these guys are like my head of my charitable trust wrote this beautiful piece about who we were and what we stood for. And I was like, Jesus, it was, and then everyone, you could see they were feeding off of that, and then Vern come in with a couple of pieces, and the whole thing took off. So to me, that culture is that way of being, and really, it doesn't matter where you go. It's peeling those layers of the orange off to get really deep. That's really going to make it hum. Yeah.
I love it, mate. I actually love the reference you said about it's an ingrained way of being, but sometimes that can be a weakness. Like that's not always said about, just because it's people just go and do it and consistently do it doesn't always make it a strength, does it, for a culture?
No, and also it changes. Does that make sense? So the external world can actually impact that your culture, which maybe have been strong, and I've got to do some more reading on this, but what's drilled down and worked for you in the past, if you're not careful, that can evolve. And I'm sort of definitely known as a disruptor, and I probably managed that poorly at times, but that evolution comes from often or that drive comes from a place of care, because you're looking at where it's going and you want to take your organisation there. Now that's great if, you look at those business of that change management with, whether it be Ospreys or or Waratahs or Blues or whatever, that has that's great, but you can get tarnished as well. But what you're seeing is you're trying to actually say, hey, if we keep doing this, we're just not going to succeed. So that evolution is really something that a leader, particularly the longer they're there, needs to be really conscious of. And initially you might have to give a sense of purpose and direction initially that captures some, but over time I think you've got to really step back and allow those other people, as in the organisation, to really step up and drive what that looks like. And you get to pick who's in the waka, right? You get to select that to a degree, but don't think just because someone's challenging you that they're not coming from, they're probably coming from a place of care too. So how do you set a framework that they get a voice to, because you can fool yourself, and I've done it, you can fool yourself that you're going there and you have people around there that maybe fear for their jobs, or, maybe not telling you what you want to hear. And that was a really interesting thing about Wales was, and I'm not just picking Wales because I think it's evident in a lot of cultures, but if you look at, I love the Welsh. We're near on 16 years there back and forth. So I don't say this with this is not a. But if you look at their history, often they were small villages where men went underground all day with somebody, their neighbours, etc., and then come up and played rugby and socialised, right? So the ability sometimes to express themselves and their feelings and how they're feeling is completely different to maybe another culture, say Australia, right? And it's how you work out, how you tap into that so they open up and tell you how they're feeling or what signals or what people can help you find that information so you can create an environment where you grow that. So every culture I've worked in starts from a different start point on where they're starting from and that type of thing.
Do you have to get down in the mine with them?
I think you do. I think you do, and I think I think you do, and enjoy that experience because they're people. They have the same issues as often you do at home, or same vulnerabilities. And I don't think I've always, because I'm a type A personality that's really driven, taken time to put the bedrock in place around care and support. And that can have a detrimental impact if you don't put that time. And that doesn't mean you have to be soft. That just means you might have to point out a couple of observations in a different way to say how you would in another environment or in another role. And adapting your role is really important.
I love it how this is a beautifully cared statement. You said you have to point out observations in a different way. That's I can imagine what that would have been in the first place. But mate, a couple of things that you said there, and I'd love to just get a little bit deeper on it. You said you're a disruptor, and you said you're a type A, and it hasn't always been coming from a place with a bedrock of care, mate. What is a disruptor? And not many people are disruptors, and what does it mean for you? Because that's a cool statement.
Yeah, well, we did obviously a lot of work around who we were in a number of environments, and what I've learned is sometimes what we call as a purple dot, you might see, or you might think you see a vision of a way something's going, and you get fixated on it, but you may not be good at the detail. So as much as I'll talk about now, some of the characteristics that I have as a leader doesn't make me good in some other areas. So detail's not particularly great, but vision and sort of seeing some dots pointing out is and where an experience and some of the facts behind that to back that up, you can be good at and identify that those things are indicators. So because of that, sometimes often a purple dot will be a person that can think outside the box or to get to a point, right? And sometimes people don't want to get outside that box, and so the way that you then encourage them to change and adapt can be the making or the breaking of you to get to that point. And I've definitely had a lot of breaks, and sometimes you have some really good breakthroughs that take you there as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes you've got to be careful as that type A, is that you're not in a hurry, that you don't just slow down and enjoy that ride.
What's been some of the big breakthroughs, or the biggest breakthrough you've had?
I think every environment's had some wins. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think the fact getting a commission through with Super Rugby was a big one. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens there and where it goes. I think the adaptation of the Ospreys to embrace who they were as a region and stop potentially trying to be something they weren't was a big part around our identity and who we were. I thought that was a really breakthrough moment that I really enjoyed. I think being part of a team that built helped build the academy structure and the Crusaders. Well, those are, I'd say there was some leaders that were leader influencing up at the time. There were still breakthrough moments of what we needed at the ground to create that. So there's little parts that you look back and go, shit, that was bloody good now that I've stepped away and actually had a chance to breathe about it. And so they're little stepping stones that may not be appreciated for a long, long time, but you've been a part of a broader team that's actually helped create that, which is really special.
Just talking about that, you were part of that first rugby academy in New Zealand, which was like the Crusaders academy type system, which has gone on to be just world renowned as, how, like, it's almost the prototype of how you run a good academy, right? What was some of the stuff that you helped put in early on, which really made it last, mate? And it's consistently just sensational, isn't it? What would you say are the big things which any academy should mirror in the early days?
I think there was when I look back now, I felt the leadership. I think you got to put it in context, and everything's got to be put into context. So if you remember, there was a number of key moments I remember in that. If you remember, Canterbury just about got kicked out of the provincial Division 1, NPC. So they're at their lowest ebb. And in steps Steve Tension and Wayne Smith, Robbie Deans, etc. And collectively, you are part of a collective. No one individual can do that. And I was pretty much a baby at that time, not understanding. So what was my role within that? My role was to be passionate at the coalface about that. You had largely Steve, who was driving a vision that, you had people who were driving the here and now to build a team that was the shop front window for the organisation, which was Canterbury at the time. We're talking about a period of time where, I think we played in a semi-final against counties and had 35,000 people there. So getting that window right actually enabled then the next phase, which was building this academy. And it started with a very limited budget. But what the other thing that was happening behind the scenes was there's this whole vulnerability-based learning. There was a whole lot of experiments going on. Gilbert and Oku was involved in the organisation, and there was some pretty. I think we made mistakes in some of the brutal conversations, but we also made a lot of success. And there was real clarity around what your role was and where you sat within that, which I thought was really, really good. But it came from teamwork. It came from a place that we knew we had to change. So then, what is it we want? So there was a really strong drive of purpose, and there was energy, and a chemistry that just connected. Now, whether that's as you get older, you learn that you can manipulate that chemistry with the selection of your building of your teams, but and maybe that was happening. Maybe but I knew what my role was. I knew we had a purpose and identity. We're at the lowest sort of ebb, and it was just in a really exciting time to be involved and learning leadership with those people. And I think when I look back I'm pleased I didn't stay in it forever or carry in that space, because you only learn one leadership style in that. Like, I'd carried probably into that role a way of behaving and being that came largely from my youth, right? So it was a battler type mentality. That's what was needed. And there's a little bit of that in the disruptor piece that I've had to learn to adapt and still continue to adapt. So those scratches, those marks that you get when you're a little person, understanding those biases and what that does to you and how that makes you react in certain circumstances is a really, it can be sometimes quite confronting and challenging, but also if you can acknowledge that, extremely rewarding on then how you can work on yourself to adapt and change. And so, yeah, that's I just felt that was a really special time, because I think the organisation was at its lowest ebb. We'd just come out of being last in the Super Rugby, and that history will never be repeated.
No. Well,
Chances are.
it makes for a great story, doesn't it? Like, just the turnaround
Yeah.
from, you weren't just middle, you were last, and then to turn
Right.
around and make something that's lasted so long and so well with so much success along the way is just phenomenal. And mate, I love that concept you talk about, just understanding your own bias. And you just said something a bit earlier about that before. You said you see, or you think you see, the way things should be. And I just think that's an important observation to make as a leader, isn't it? Just to know that just because you're seeing it a certain way, you've got a lens, you've got a stance and a viewpoint from your own experience, which isn't always the truth, is it?
No. And it's something I definitely learnt. I think Daryl Gibson was really good at this. I felt seek to understand. And again, if you're a driven type of character, you have these biases sometimes, but you get success through a certain way of behaving. It's really challenging to change and adapt that. So asking questions, taking the time to ask questions, exploring, but also creating an environment where people feel they can be honest in that response. I think it can take a bit of time to get used to my leadership as a team. And once they know, and if you actually give authority back, you get into a discussion, you're away, and you've almost got to train people that yep. But if you can, I wouldn't say manipulate's too strong a word, but then he'll become a great ally for you and that kind of stuff.
Are you quite a tough guy to are you quite an intimidating sort of guy to chat to in those boardroom type settings? Do you have a bit of edge about you?
I don't know. You'd have to ask others on that.
I've got the list here, mate. I'll read them out.
Yeah. No, I don't say I always get it right, but I do feel that I do believe in throwing something on the table and it should be chewed over. And what I don't like is if that's not chewed over vigorously. Because I think there's some big issues in all of the organisations I've stepped into where they've largely been on their bones and asked they need to get to the nub of the problem, right? And that is not always easy to get to. And I think if I look back now, and if we go back to the previous part of the discussion, I thought Steve G did a really wonderful meeting once in the Copthorne Hotel, where we did a strategy for Canterbury and the Crusaders moving forward. And it was a great debate. And I think embracing that environment, but for some people that is not the way they roll. And you can't drive that into people. You've got to adapt your leadership to bring that out of the people. And it's probably taken me time to learn that. And then learning the art of adapting that style to enable them to bring their issues forward. You can sit there and say, this is where I want to roll and this is what I want. But they ain't comfortable with it. They ain't coming with anything. All right.
Have you had some examples of that? Any specific ones where you've gone, I've blown that?
Oh, number, probably, but many I can't even think. But
you can't pick the best one.
Pick the best one, but you do need to. All I can say is that it does. You know, as a leader, when you walk away, and then you delve into how a session went or something went, that you'll find people that'll give you that little bit of gold dust to tell you when that happened, right? And it's that Daryl Gibson seek to understand mentality that, you take something from everyone you meet along the road, and that's something I've definitely taken from him. And actually, when you get past yourself too, and you understand that the fact they're saying it is probably because they actually want it to be great, then you appreciate it more. It's when you get hurt by it, and then you might adapt or change or embrace that conversation then. And that takes a bit.
Does it still, when you have those sort of robust discussions, you're obviously 30 years in on this stuff, you enjoy it, you're part of it. Do you still get a little bit, when someone says something, does it sting still? Like, you go, "Ugh," and then does it get you back up? Is that still part of your work?
I think so, because you care, right?
Yeah.
Because you go into these roles, any role, a lot of people, you go in and you're doing it because you feel you're trying to do the right thing. So straight away, you're not coming necessarily from an egotistical perspective. It's like you get passionate about rugby, right? Because you love rugby.
Yep.
Right? So if you're doing what's right for the game, but you're approaching it in an incorrect manner, then it still hurts when that's pointed out. All right. So, but you're coming from a place of care, so of course you care, and so it takes a little bit to unpack that and get a little bit of self-confidence to go, right, I've got to change, adapt, and roll with this group. And as your organisation grows too, your role within that may adapt. Yeah. And the Blues is a classic case between, we felt, having a small group that redefined the purpose and identity with, at the same time, see, there was the broader proposition of the business, and then within that is the individual propositions of the teams and parts of the business. They want their own identity.
Ooh, yeah, you got to divide it up.
Yeah, you do. I'm a great believer in this, because particularly in rugby, because you are often dealing with coaches who have a view and an identity, right, on where they want to take the team. Yes. And so, without going into too much detail around the Blues, because I really am proud with where we identified, but and particularly in Auckland was really interesting, or in the Blues region, our region has never been unified. No. Right? We had Northern Iwi battling with Ngāti Whātua. We had Hobson, getting bashed up in the north, coming south. We've had Bastion Point. We had, you know what I mean? We now live in a city like Sydney, where we go back to our region and we largely stay there for the weekend, and then we come back together again. So how do we bring that together? And our view was, actually, if we can set a parameter, and so that's not Crusaders, right? That's not Crusader, that's not any of that. This was a Blues way around people, connections, and excellence. You also have the most multicultural city probably in the world now. The next 15 to 30 years, it's going to be, largely Southeast Asian in a lot of ways. It's changing, it's evolving. And so how do you encapsulate that and do it our way? And our view was, now within that too, and this came out of a piece of work, it was really interesting how it meshed together, and it was tough at the beginning, but I don't know if you've ever seen The Last Dance, but where the GM is talking about broader aspects, but the coach has a philosophy. And actually, if you watch it, they're actually quite closely aligned, but in almost sense slightly divided. I think I was really lucky with Leon that he spoke. He was doing a lot of work around that team identity, and he'd done that. He'd been there a few months earlier, a period of time earlier. So he'd done some work, which was really good. And then we did some work around the business, and we had to evolve and oscillate and try to bring the two parts together. Whereas when I was at the Crusaders, it was largely team driven, and then the organisation took that on and then took that forward. At the Blues, and then the Ospreys was largely the business sorted it, and then the teams took it forward because different reasons. And here we had two groups, so we had to have some, and we did it, I remember, at the Auckland Yacht Club, and we had some, there was 4 or 5 of us, really robust discussions, really robust. And we came up with this concept of mini Waka moving together. So there need to be a broad umbrella, but then within that, if the coaches took key parts of that story and drove that we agreed upon, they could do that in any way they want. And I think our NIB Blues did that really, really well. They grabbed where we wanted to go as a region, and they really drove that home within their own team. And I think to Vern in his own way too, someone said to me, yeah, but Vern never uses your language. Vern didn't have to use my language because Vern's actions were actually driving what we wanted in his own way. All right. And so those kind of little moments, or those, they all start from a different place, but you may not walk into an organisation where you can just set it down and move it forward. You're all starting from a different place, and you've got to create an environment where you can have some good discussions to work out how you're going to move together for mutual benefit.
Well, I'd be right. I remember hearing that kind of statement, like when you're talking about, say, the Crusaders, it's very easy to sit in one, like we'll call it a canoe for those that don't know a waka as a canoe. One, everyone's on the same canoe, one direction, all in there. But when you're talking about the Blues in such a multicultural city, not everyone's going to be on the one, are they? There's going to be 5 or 6 different ones, but that's fine as long as you are still going in the same direction. So that's the big difference, isn't it? Where you had to make that change. Multicultural place, lots of different factors. If you try cram everyone into the same boat, it's just going to be a debacle, right? It's not going to work.
And changes your ethos too from one of driving in that direction to how do I support then that group to go in the same direction. So our academy and development structure then became about how do we resource such a big region and give them a little bit more autonomy, right, and stand back. Whereas if you look at other regions, it's about, we're going to set the agenda, we're going to set the curriculum. That wouldn't have worked here. And I'm a big believer that the top will only get to be the top if you get your systems and structures right below. I'm still a big believer in that. I think we've lost a bit of that in New Zealand rugby. That what makes the All Blacks is actually that massive, and I'm really worried that we're going to end up being, and I can say this because I'm passionate about the Welsh as well, but I'm really worried that we're going to end up being like the Welsh, where it's become so team Wales focused. What made Wales great was the love, the living for the game, the competition structures, everything that was underneath that fed that. And I'm just worried that that Team of Black philosophy forgets that how do you grow what's underneath that'll give you what you want, not, and you see it. And a good example is actually France. If you grow a great competition, you grow great facilities, you grow great coaches, those people come up and carry you forward. Don't. Scott Johnson once said to me, don't. Innovation comes from the bottom to the top, not from the top to the bottom. Right. So how do you inject that you get that innovation, that difference, while also then being able to mold that into what you need at the top? And so one of the fears I probably have for the game, one of the reasons I felt I had to step away, is the ethos around that internationalism, and yet great competitions with well-trained coaches and well-resourced facilities. And this is I think we've got a wonderful opportunity with the women's game. If we can grow great facilities with great coaches, with great competition structures, the Black Ferns will take care of itself,
Yeah.
But our initial thought is straight to, we'll get the Black Ferns going. But at what cost everything else? So this is so that's where I sort of...
Well, you could sort of say that applies across all, like, clubs, anyone, like schools. Like, it's very easy to potentially just recruit in a whole lot of players for the top team, and that may win you a few seasons in a row. A lot of club teams here do it. They just go offshore, buy a whole lot, win a championship, but it's not growing the stuff underneath, is it? The stuff which will actually keep it growing strong, like the Crusaders for so long.
Yeah, but also to remember that is a fine balance, and where I've gone wrong sometimes is, particularly in those coming out of those high performance years, is feeling you've got to go down that line of performance development, but you got to, in professional sport, you've got to keep your shot window strong too. And I felt at the Ospreys we actually got that balance really well. The fact was they were hemorrhaging near £4.5 million a year. We had to cut that loss. We had to go to... I remember we won the championship with Danny on the Sunday in Dublin, and I got a phone call from the tax department in England on the Monday. And I had to go to London, and we had what was it called? Some bloody thing. Anyway, they shut us down. And we went to London. We got refinanced. Cost us £48,000 a month from Close Brothers Bank. I remember that. Knocked on every door we could find, and we had to cut costs accordingly. But we had to cut costs to make sure that we still kept an Ospreys brand, still remained in quarterfinal Europe, while trying to build an identity, while trying to build a talent flow. So settled with debt, and it's really hard. Every decision you make is a balance. And do you see, if you don't have an environment where you can debate with your board, your major shareholders, and that but be left to make a decision, then you get isolated and you get your throat cut.
Yeah.
Luckily, in that environment, and we had some board issues as well, but by and large, you've got to have that chair, CEO, coach in particular on song, and the chair through those key stakeholders on the board, the coach, the CEO, and those key stakeholders around the commercial and the staff, and then you coach. And so that becomes, and it's the same for any organisation, is how do you get that flow? How do you set that direction? How do you take them on that journey? And then support them?
How do you choose your coaches? How do you choose your head coach when you come to select a coach?
It's different for every situation. I feel that this was really interesting. Something I definitely I look for character. I definitely look for character in the first instance. And I'll give you some generic attributes first, and then we can sort of drill down. I think you need to look at historically what's worked well for your organisation. And I learnt that I thought Josh Blakey did a really good job here for the Blues. He analysed, because each environment is different and the people are different. So our environment of the Blues is very different to other environments, and our ethnic makeup is different. Their experiences as kids are different. The Welsh are different. The Aussies are different, all right? And so sometimes you make a hard decision to take a coach, but sometimes you make equally as hard decision not to take a coach. I'll give you a classic example.
Mm.
Would have been really easy to take Steve Tandy, I reckon, of the Waratahs, but politically he would have got eaten up
Why is
because
that?
it's a cesspit over there with regard to politics, right? And so you need, and it wasn't what they're looking for. So you've got to identify, but is he full of the right character? Does he have a specialisation in a certain technical area? See, this is the other thing that where did this culture coach bullshit come from? Like, seriously, a coach and the coaches, or a CEO and the senior management team, drive a culture. But they also have a specialisation. You don't specialise in that, right?
Mm.
We've got that completely wrong. Culture coach, I've never heard anything more. Like, that's a sign that we're not allowing other people to grow it. And so...
wait on. Was there a specialist coach in that environment for that?
No, I think your head coach has always got to drive the cultural aspect within your team.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Your CEO still has to have set framework and drive these things. But ultimately, if a good leader will then allow the others to carry that for you and drive that and argue back with you when it's not right. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. It's not high, you don't stand there and you hopefully throw something out there, you debate it, you take it out. Right, we're going to go out the door. And so what I look for is, well, not me personally, but when we sat down and look at the criteria, there's some generic things. What does history tell us about what we need in this environment? What is the mix of our management team right now? Who are we keeping? Who are we not keeping? What do we need within that? There's where the organisation is in its evolution, because sometimes you just need someone that's going to give it a kick in the guts. This is where the Michael Checkers and that of the world have a place, because sometimes they might get that started.
Yep.
Right? He may not agree with this, I don't know, but there might be someone else that takes it further. I look at that Leinster model and Joe and what happened. It was a lovely evolution for them, right? So I think you've got to look at that. You've got to look at, I always think a coach has got to have a technical proficiency in something they own, something. And I think defense is a great one because it's often systematic. That doesn't necessarily mean that I would take someone in that, but I think they've got to own something. And often they've got to have the ability to see a bigger picture and drive a wider agenda for the club. So there's some generic things, and then within that comes your club-specific pieces about who you are and what you need in that point in time, and what they've got around them, and that kind of thing. Yeah, and what your future looks like. Yeah.
Mm. Would you say that technical piece, just for a lot of coaches listen to this, is it better to have a hard specialisation than just to be a generalist over a few things, just to have a niche where that's you?
I think that can help to have a niche, but of course you need to be across.
Yeah.
Which is where I think, I was there in high performance when Graham was running the Blacks. I felt, he took that defence portfolio, which means he can do his work, but then still have time to question and examine with the other coaches what they're looking at. I see that, I think, with Vern on his Sundays, he's extremely disciplined. I don't think I'm speaking out of school. He's very disciplined after a game around his behaviours, getting to bed, getting to sleep, getting up the next day, doing his homework, being ready for when the coaches come in, right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So that enables them to be a specialist in their area, but a questioner and a developer and a support person for the other people in their environment. It's a very selfless role, being a good head coach, because you've got to give to so many people. It's I really have come to admire good coaches, and that week-long turnaround, or head coaches rather, that week-long turnaround you've often got 50 people, 50 players, plus maybe 15 to 20 support staff. You've got to do your own stuff as well. It's, you know yourself, Ben, it's intense. And on top of it, you got to be looking for innovation, etc. So those kind of things. So how do you support that person with the right talent AB person, the right development person, so they're not having to think about that, is really, really important. And that's where I really feel where the good GMs of this world will fill that slack, that void, and ensure that not that they do it, because I don't think that's the GM of rugby's role either, but they put the right people in place and create the right environment where the head coach knows they've got our back. And sometimes, though, a decision has to be made that may not be right for them here and now. I mean, some coaches would throw a checkbook and get the best team right here and now, right? Now, for some organisations, that's what they need.
Yeah.
You know, like I look at Newcastle right now, you could argue that's what they need. And then you build your academy. For some organisations, it's if we get the development and that, like a Leinster, or that, if we get that right, it's a weighting. It's not a and or. It's a weighting to a degree.
Yeah, it's on a spectrum somewhere, isn't it? Where you sit.
Where you sit, and you can't be too wishy-washy either, and that's where the debate comes, because it's got to be a hard, you know, I always say, it's like, I'll give you another example as a CEO. With the Blues, it was really clear. We raised our commercial revenue by 65% over my tenure there through appointment of good people, because we identified really early we did not have the resource of people nor the commercial revenue to come what we wanted to become. Still we haven't made it yet. But, so we had to start there. Now, what did that mean? Well, that mean that actually you can't be Stade Francais with dancing girls and firecrackers and everything on match day. You can't. The first thing you had to start with was a dream, a hope, and aspiration to raise the base income. And you got to get your team performing. And then luckily and then we needed a connection through to the community. So that was our top three. Some things then had to fall away around the marketing and aspects, etc., while we focused on that. But if we tried to do too much too early, and within that too, the fifth pillar is around people. And so some of those people sacrificed for the greater good of the organisation their own development, because the resource had to be put into those areas. And this is a big flaw I see in some, because we're a sport that has multiple stakeholders, you can't please everybody. And I know damn well that I've left, and some people think I'm the biggest prick in the world, but you just got to make a choice.
How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that reality that there'll be people that are thinking that of you? How's it?
Initially, I think probably harsh. It's more your wife and missus that needs to put up with it, isn't it? It's just
depends how you come home, Andrew. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly right. Take a breath. And I remember Steve Hansen saying to me, make sure you're off the phone before you go on the door.
Yes.
Right. And he's right. Because your whatever-old does not give a shit.
Yep.
Yeah. Right.
And that's massive too, mate, isn't it? Not just for like your role and like CEO stuff, but for coaches too. Like, it's so easy to drag all your baggage and your weight from where you've just been to your home life, and there's no separation, is there? Like, that would be a massive piece of advice to anyone that's uber passionate about the game, is to make sure it stays a game and you leave it where it's supposed to be, which is out there on the field, not dragging it into your own four walls. Would you say that's
Yeah.
that's very real, isn't it, for a lot of head coaches and CEOs in the industry?
Yeah, I think so. And it all comes back to you asked that question, which I thought was, how do you deal with that? I think probably early on poorly, because it mounts, and your public perception or etc., or whatever drives you really, you might be a born warrior, you might etc. But I think as you grow and get a skin and take some knocks, or you can rationalize that in your own mind and maybe even verbalize that in a better way, then you learn that you're just not going to change some people's perceptions of who you are and what you stand for. It's really interesting. I'm really interested to see how this McCullum piece will go, because he's laid it out, right? He's laid out, that's our blueprint. That's who we are. But don't underestimate, leaders aren't not listening to those things, and it's then how you teach yourself to deal with that. And the biggest thing I probably learned was getting my mental mind state try to get in the right place, because you don't always, before I get out of the car to go into the office or into the home.
You're going both ways.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
you walk into that office and your head, and I was piss poor at this. You think they want to see me busy, working hard, but actually they want to see a handshake and how they're going. And it taken me a long time to realise that, I think, and appreciate that. And some people do it remarkably well. I think Byrne does it well. I think 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐿 do it well. I think those great relationship managers do that kind of thing really well.
Mate, that's a good one, man, because we often talk about like the mental state when you leave, make sure you don't bring the baggage home, but also not like you've got a flick going the other way when you're coming in too, right? You've got to be wary and present, and sometimes, like we talked about earlier, your perception isn't always correct. What you see or you think you see isn't always right. You've got biases all over the show.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you won't, and understanding those biases, and I think as a leader, don't be afraid to understand how your upbringing may impact your biases, you know, and your way of acting and being. But I've been doing a really good course through London School of Economics on negotiation. It's been really, really good to look at that paradigm between driving something through and how do you come to collaborating something through with another party. And actually, you're not sitting across the table from them. You're sitting on the same side, identifying what problems you share together first. I think that's the one learning I've got from this, which I've really enjoyed, is you're sitting on that same side of the table, laying out the issues first that you may actually need to work together on, and out of that builds trust and so on. It's been a really good, because then you bring your biases, and if you can start to share that, because the other thing I was going to say before was, when you get a group that you can actually share what your worry is a brilliant, or even actually being bold enough to flick it out there first, what your worry is, and you watch people come to your support when you throw that out there. It's I think it's a pretty special thing.
That is special.
Human beings are pretty cool in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Share what your worry is and watch how people come support.
Yeah, I reckon.
Yeah, mate.
Some won't. That's okay. We need something to that too, right?
Yeah. That's
Oh, yeah.
exactly right. Now, mate, that's gold. Now, Hore, this conversation has ripped on by, man. We haven't got much longer, so I've just got a quick one, and then I'll close it out for you, mate. But you've now left rugby. You've made that call to go out on your terms, and now you've bought a business, and you're applying everything you've learned in rugby to your new business, mate. How is that crossover from high performance sport to the business world or the corporate world?
No, I haven't bought a business. I was looking at buying a business. I've ended up going into a business where basically someone has decided that they will support me in learning it, and then they will make a decision. So it's even more.
You're on trial.
You're on trial.
Yeah.
And by Jesus, that is scary. So you think your question was, what am I going to bring into that?
Yeah.
Yep. I think definitely around people and care is really important.
Yeah.
How can I support and help up is really important. How can I be adaptable and control my own emotions is going to be really, really important within this, because there's a real high level of vulnerability in it. And how am I going to hold people to account in a manner which motivates them? They're probably my 4 big things.
What does support up mean?
Support up is, luckily, I've been a leader, and so I know how isolated that is. So how do I go in there and help the person that's given me this opportunity to support his senior leadership team to be the best I can be, to take the pressure off them, or to have that conversation where they feel they can trust me without trying to undermine them in any way and support them. And that's going to take a little bit of time, and showing some really good actions that hopefully means that they trust and stuff, while at the same time 30 years in rugby means I've got a hell of a lot to learn about non-rugby stuff.
You're actually starting again. Yeah.
I don't know who the inventor from SAP is, but if I meet him in a dark alley, he could have made it easier, surely.
I love it, mate. I love it. Well, mate, I'm sure your learnings will put you on bloody good stead, mate, because the pressure you've been under in these amazing roles for the last 3 decades, no doubt will put you in a good place to be able to adapt and to be flexible on that. Now, mate, the last question I'd like to ask is just a bit of an interesting one, because it always brings up interesting things, and this is this. What's one belief you have? And I'll ask you about leadership, actually. What's one belief you have about leadership that you believe in that you think your peers would disagree with?
Care, sometimes, because when I'm driven, particularly not so much within my environment, but with stakeholders, when I'm fighting for my organisation, I can approach that. That's probably one of my greatest work-ons. Would be there, I think, is I think that perception outside of actually genuinely caring and how you approach that is key. And takes all I'd say to people on that is take some time on how you approach that.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
Bloody love it, mate.
Did that answer that, Benny?
Mate, that's good, mate.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I do it. I actually, as much as the question was what you disagree, I actually believe that care is a massive one too. I think it's a huge part of everything: family life, sports life, business life. It underpins it all. And sometimes we forget that. We get thrown away in the swirl of things and think all this other stuff is more important, but it keeps coming back to that, I think.
And we show it, and really sometimes it manifests itself in the wrong way when you're actually coming from a really good place. Yeah.
That's a great point, mate. Andrew Hore, what a pleasure to have you on the Coaching Culture podcast, mate. If I may, I like to just sum up my 3 key takeaways from this conversation, mate. So here they are. Number 1 is, mate, understand the perception. Like you talked about, sometimes what you think you see is just what you think you see. Like it's not hard in concrete. Like you have a bias, and understanding that bias, understanding your upbringing shapes your bias, and shining a bit of light on that fact is a really awesome one for leaders to be aware of, that what you see sometimes is just what you think you see, and it may not actually be reality. And I just think that's a lovely thing just to be aware of in yourself. Number 2, that concept of seek to understand as a leader. Ask questions, explore, and create environments where people can respond honestly. And that is a true art, and it doesn't come natural to a lot of people, but the more you can seek to understand what other people are thinking, the benefit it's going to have to your whole environment. And number 3, your mental mind state, if that's a phrase, and getting it right both on entry and exit of the place where you work. And in this context, it's professional rugby, the way you approach the office or the field in the mornings and the way you leave it. And leaving, the way you turn up is very different to the way you leave. And you've just got to make sure that, again, your perception of what you're walking into is right for the people that you're approaching. And likewise, all the baggage that you've had throughout the day needs to be left at that place. So when you go home, the game stays on the field and you're in family mode. And that differential is important. It's up and down. It's getting that balance right. It's knowing when to be who, when, and where. Andrew Hore, what a pleasure to have you on the Coaching Culture podcast today.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, man.